When conservatives are asked what they intend to conserve, the typical response is loosely related lists of things like the family or the Constitution or liberty. When a conservative is asked to define himself, he finds himself in a situation as complicated as those who are pressed to answer the question, what is a woman? Yet, conservatism is supposed to be revealing some political truth. In fact, it's supposed to be the correct political theory over, say, socialism or liberalism. But unlike conservatism, socialism and liberalism can define itself coherently. Socialism just means to abolish class distinctions. Liberalism just means to maximize individual freedom. In both cases, these theories can justify themselves by their very definitions. Conservatism, in contrast, struggles to achieve this. What does small government have to do with institutions, have to do with liberty, have to do with the family, have to do with change? In practice, conservatism just is a symbol of how a person votes. For example, many MAGA Republicans will say that they're conservative. Yet, many conservative black churchgoers will vote Democrat. But what exactly makes a political theory coherent in the first place? Nicholas Smith gives us 3 criteria for what constitutes a coherent political theory. First, he thinks that a political theory needs to be unified by something. Socialism, for example, is unified by its goal of abolishing class distinction. Liberalism is unified by its aim at maximizing individual freedom. But conservatism, at least popularly understood, tends to list loosely related things: small government, the Constitution, freedom, etc., as a unifier. By contrast to liberalism and socialism, conservatism's disjointed list does the opposite of unification. In fact, it disjoints what conservatism is. So Smith wants to define conservatism in a way that avoids incoherent listing. And this makes sense. If someone is going to say that their political theory is true, it needs to have a definition that unifies its ideas. This is what political theories do. Liberalism has Rawls, socialism has Marx. But what does conservatism have? The best of conservative intellectuals, such as Burke, say they want to preserve institutions. Burke is considered the father of modern conservatism, so Smith is right to unify conservatism by its goal to preserve well-established institutions. And that is exactly what he does. The next criterion is a theory's ability to guide action in all situations. This leaves conservatives with a problem. What do we do when 2 well-established institutions come into conflict? Consider church and state. In the mid-1160s, Henry II, King of England, wanted jurisdiction over clergy who committed crimes. At that time, priests were tried in church courts, which gave far lighter punishments. Henry thought this was absurd. He thought that a murderous priest should hang just like everyone else. He pushed for the constitutions of Clarendon to bring clergy under royal courts. Thomas Becket, Archbishop of Canterbury, refused. He argued that the church answers to God and God only. This example is perfectly articulating Smith's point. A conservative who simply wants to preserve all well-established institutions has no guidance here. These are 2 deeply embedded, legitimate institutions in direct conflict with each other. The conservative has no action-guiding principle to resolve this. Therefore, conservatism is incoherent. Smith tries to resolve this by adding to the definition, preserve all valuable, well-established institutions. This shifts the concern from institutions in conflict to institutional collapse. What if few or no good institutions exist? What happens when we put a conservative in Venezuela in 2015, where institutions themselves cause the nation to hollow out? The military, the election system, the government, the courts, all corrupted, the economy destroyed. What then is a conservative to do? The definition only tells us to preserve all valuable institutions. It does not tell us what to do when few or no good institutions remain. So Smith decides that conservatism needs to preserve all well-established institutions and create new ones where few or no good ones remain. But he thinks that this definition would make conservatism generic. All political theories would agree with this. And conservatism at this point is not distinguishable from any other political theory that's supposed to be true. So Smith wants to say that conservatism fails to be comprehensive, action-guiding, and distinguishable from its rivals, and therefore fails to be a coherent political theory. If there is no such thing as a conservative political theory, then there is no such thing as a political conservative. But what if the test itself is wrong? Since when did a political theory necessarily demand abstract principles that apply in all cases? Where did this picture of politics come from? And is it unique to conservatives? In footnote 5, Smith says that it is possible that other political theories may fail to meet this criteria. I think that it is more than possible, because socialism just means abolish class distinctions. But what would a socialist do in a scenario where everyone was already class equal? Do we dissolve the state? Do we maintain it? After apartheid ended in 1994, South Africa achieved formal class and racial equality under the law. By socialism's own definition, abolish class distinctions, the job is done. But the country was still devastated. Massive wealth inequality, unemployment, crumbling infrastructure, deep social fractures. What does the socialist do now? The definition gives no guidance. Abolishing class distinctions doesn't tell you how to rebuild an economy or what institutions to prioritize. The goal has been reached, but the work clearly hasn't been done. Socialism, like conservatism in Venezuela, goes silent precisely when guidance is needed most. So both theories fail Smith's criteria. The coherence problem is not unique to conservatism if other ideologies fail in the same way. And while there is good reason to criticize conservatism, especially American conservatism, we need not make a special pleading for conservatism to meet criteria that other valuable ideologies also fail to meet. If Smith's test disqualifies other political ideologies that we believe hold some political truth, then maybe the criteria itself is too narrow. There needs to be an alternative definition for political theories that preserves what Smith gets right, while also maintaining that abstract doctrine is not necessary for coherence. So in this 4-part series, since Smith's assumptions for what constitutes a political theory don't work, we're going to answer the question, what even is a political theory? I believe that to solve his trilemma, we need to understand that a political theory is not an abstract doctrine, but rather a vision that informs our political thinking and choices. Smith's critique of conservatism seems to center around an underdeveloped understanding of institutions. He acknowledges Burke's distinction between essential and peripheral changes within institutions, but he does not apply it in a way that brings out what institutions are fundamentally. We need to understand institutions as communities, not patterns of norms. Once we understand that political theories are normative visions and institutions are fundamentally types of associations, we can come to see that conservatism is a vision oriented toward preserving well-established institutions.